the only people who don't get yeses in their lives are the people who kept themselves from getting them, who gave up on themselves because they were too afraid of what it might mean about their identity or whatever. So really, it's like you can only fail if you give up.
Welcome to the Funny in Failure podcast, a podcast that celebrates failure and shines the light on the emotional side of comedy, with yours truly, Michael Kahan.
My guest today is a special human. She's the living embodiment of rising to the challenge. No matter the situation, Shannon is able to thrive and move forward, which left me speechless quite a few times. In particular, hearing about her childhood and the challenges that are presented, it's always so inspiring when we want to tackle our traumas, grow, and move forward from them. Plus, it's also so incredible that Shannon is willing to share such a story and even make a movie about it, which I'm super excited to see when it comes out. She's a real gem, uber empowering, and a role model to all. So in short, Shannon's amazing. You'll love her. I know you'll take a lot out of this chat, as I have. So let's get into it and introduce today's guest. Shannon Lucio is an actor, producer, and writer known for her many roles in The O.C., Prison Break, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, The Right Stuff, True Blood, Fireflies in the Garden, Feast of Love, Grey's Anatomy, Segfault, Shameless, NCIS, Roots, Bosch, Supernatural, American Horror Story, Once Upon a Time, Castle, and Grounded, to name a few. So in this wide-ranging chat, we talk about judging ourselves, challenging childhoods, mothering her sister, good student syndrome and perfectionism, Montessori schools, success, rejection, and choosing happiness. Also, before we get into this chat, in case you aren't aware, the videos are now available on YouTube under Michael Kahan. That's Kahan with a K, unless you're listening to it already. I find it adds a new element and dynamic to these chats. I'll still be posting snippets of these chats on Instagram under Funny in Failure, so check them out if you want to stay in the loop for upcoming episodes or you want to ask a guest a question. I'd also love it if you would share the podcast or share your takeaways from the chat. It really motivates me, helps the podcast grow, and ensures I can lock in amazing guests like this one. And just as a final reminder, the podcast comes out every Monday at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, with the video to follow the following day. Anyway, sit back, relax, and enjoy today's epic episode.
I found this really interesting, and I know it was a few years ago, but you were in this very awesome concept. I don't know how to pronounce it, Segfault.
Segfault, yes. Mm-hmm.
And I was reading about it, and it kind of blew my mind because, actually, I'll let you talk to it. Can you tell me about your experience doing this movie?
Oh my gosh, this was like a one-of-a-kind, once-in-a-lifetime deal. So amazing. My dear friend who I've worked with before, I've known for 20 years, he called me up one day and he says, okay, I want you to star in my movie. And I said, okay, great. Well, what's it about? And he goes, I can't tell you. And I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, that's the whole premise of the film is I'm going to put you in a story that you have absolutely no idea what it is. You don't know your lines. You don't have any lines. And I just want to see what you do. And I was instantly intrigued and also terrified. Also because I knew he wanted to shoot this in Texas. And I was like, okay, I'll do this. But just one thing, no guns. No fake prop guns in this, because I know everyone is carrying around there, and I don't want some like hero thinking something's really going on and getting into.
True.
So I show up. I go to my costume fitting blindfolded. I'm putting clothes on. I have no idea what they look like, and they're deciding, okay, this is the costume. And I'm like trying to glean information based on like the texture of the fabric, like, okay, this is a dress. Okay, this is, whatever. And apparently that was all staged. Like he was trying to throw me off, making me think one thing about my character that I ended up wearing a completely different costume in the day.
That's genius by him.
I'm just amazed. And so they take me blindfolded to the set. I'm like, I don't know where I am. I'm holding up someone's shoulder, and he sits me down on a chair, and I'm like hyperventilating. I'm so freaked out because I also knew there was like no second takes. We were shooting this in basically 14 hours or however long it took, but like one continuous take.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And he sat me down in this chair and he said, "Are you ready?" And I said, "Yes." And he just reminded me, he said, "Shannon, lead with your balls." And I was like, okay. And then he said, "Then let's begin." And he took the blindfold off. And then began this adventure where I had to just figure out who I was, where I was, what my goal was. And it was just so insane and so much fun and exhausting. I think I crashed for like almost 24 hours straight after it. And yeah, it's such a shame that film, like we thought for sure that film was going to have this great afterlife because, you know, the nature in which it was filmed, but it was hard to communicate that like in the promotional material.
It's so different.
It's so different. It's like, it's not about, people watch trailers and they, you know, look for the story and the stars, and it didn't have stars. And the story was, you could wrap your mind around the story, but what was really unique about it is how it was told. So that was, it kind of was a tough sell.
It's okay. I wrote down like 1,000 points. How did you remain grounded? Because you would be terrified. You'd also probably come a little bit from fear, because if you stuff up, you don't get a second take. That's tough in itself. You don't know what you're doing. Now you have to be in the moment. So you can't, because you always get a second take, usually. How did you deal with that? How did you go straight to the Zen place?
Well, I didn't really, you know, honestly, when I first began, if you watch that film in the first like 5 minutes, I do a lot of crying because I'm like really overwhelmed and scared, and like, not just scared for like, what's this plot going to be? And there's some elements that are revealed to me right off the bat that are like very high stakes. But also I'm like, oh my gosh, don't fuck this up. Don't fuck this up. And then I took this pause, like I sort of leaned against this hotel window, and I just realized everything that I'm going through and truth with my own situation, all those feelings would mirror what she's actually going through in this situation. You know, the fear, like, what did I do? Did I make a mistake? You know, and the high stakes of it all, like, I don't know what's going to happen to me. So I just said, just allow it. Don't judge yourself. Don't be like, oh, that was bad. You know, you just can't be in that headspace. You just have to like work off of instinct and let the audience judge later.
That is such a nice take. 2 points on that. Do you have improv experience? What made the guy like work with you for this role? Because it sounds like you were perfect.
I do have some improv experience, but I'm not a person who studied that. You know, I just have done it in projects. But I think really it was our friendship. You know, we'd known each other at that point for like 15 years. And I really just think he knew that I was going to be game for it, and that I would trust him, and he trusted me to, you know, not let the pressure of the circumstance make me cave, or be, you know, sort of a prima donna about my needs of it all. So I think that's really what it came down to, is our relationship.
There was also something really interesting that you said about not judging yourself, because that is common in life, but especially like with acting, for example, there's cameras on you, there's crew watching you. Were you able to apply that lesson after this movie of not judging yourself? Is it something that you think about, or did you just have to apply all of these concepts in the moment? I just find it a really interesting concept, especially in this day and age. Yeah.
It's something that I imagine most people struggle with on a daily basis, you know, and in my work too. Like yesterday, for example, I was putting myself on tape for an audition, and I go back and watch the takes, and everything from like, oh my God, my face is a different color than my neck. And like, oh, look at my, you know, my eyes are doing some weird thing. Or like, this is really just not very good. You know, I could do better. Like, it's something that I try to remind myself of before I do every take, which is like, I'm enough. I'm already interesting. Like, we're already all so interesting. And so if I did nothing and I just thought, while this other person is talking, like, that's going to be interesting. So let go of this like idea of performing and showing all your sort of tricks and how good you are, because that is less interesting.
Oh, I've got a similar mentality that, everyone's interesting, everyone has a story. Is this something that you had to learn along the way, or have you always applied that?
No, I had to learn along the way. I still struggle with, but really did more so when I was younger, the sort of good student syndrome of just like not wanting to be caught with my pants down and wanted to be the consummate like professional and good at my job. And I remember, it's funny that I can't remember who told me this, maybe because it was sort of hard for me to hear, but I remember a casting director telling me, some casting directors saying, Shannon, after I got done with a take, you're always so good. And I said, oh, thank you. And she said, that's not a compliment.
Oh.
And I was like, damn, bitch, like, you're getting real here. But also, obviously, I was like, whoa, okay, I need to really reassess, what my desire to be sort of seen as good and what it's really doing for me. And so, yeah, I had to learn that along the way. And it's something I'm constantly battling with, this idea of like, just being, and like the messiness is a part of what's really engaging. And that if I try to hit all these beats, you kind of end up taking the life out of it.
Yeah, not being, I've heard a similar take where you're being in the moment, but you're not really being in the moment. You're looking to hit certain points. That's a really awesome bit of advice. I'm sure when you received it, it would have been quite hard to hear. Or did you adjust like that? Or was it something that was brewing? Because that's life-changing advice, especially when you don't want to hear it.
Yeah, well, I definitely took it to heart, because like, although I don't remember who said this, I remember I respected her.
Yep.
And I took it to heart, and I've been working on it all the time. And even in my tape, I find that what it is if you are trying to show them how good you are, what you're doing is you're like watching yourself in your mind's eye. You're watching you instead of putting your attention on the target and basing your next move on how they're responding to you, and which is what we do in life. I mean, we watch ourselves too, but yeah. We're going after an agenda. We're trying to get something, and we're only going to get it from the other person, and so we have to change their mind or get them to see the world the way that we do, or whatever the case is. So yeah, it was hard to hear, but I remember I went home and I told my fiance at the time, which like, I knew this was going to mean we were going to launch into like a long discussion about it, which I would hate, because I would feel so uncomfortable talking about my weaknesses, but I knew I needed to talk about it with him. So.
Oh, okay. That is awesome, especially with someone that you love to address weaknesses. You have to, okay, there's too many thoughts popping in my mind. There's a level of vulnerability there, and to actually, seek advice and work it out. It sounds like, just from a few things that you said, that you kind of had to reevaluate you maybe in industry, or just you and how you see the world. So what came about from like a conversation like that? Have you actively been working on yourself? I threw a lot out there, but the main point is, when you were discussing this with your fiance, what did that kind of unlock for you? Because there's so many emotional elements when we have conversations like that.
Yeah, it started to help me see myself as someone who was reacting to my trauma, and that I was sort of stuck in this loop of, I had an unusual childhood, in that I had to become responsible very early. And I'm actually making a movie about this right now, but when I was young, when I was 9 years old, my aunt and uncle died in a murder-suicide. And my cousin, my then cousin, she was 4 months old at the time. She was born with developmental disabilities because of a traumatic birth. My parents were her godparents, and so we adopted her, and she became my sister. And not long after we adopted her, it was very hard for my parents to financially support her and the whole family, because she had a lot of needs. And so both my parents worked full time, and even more than full time. Like, my dad really was not there a lot. And so I became the main caregiver of my sister at the age of like 12. And so this good student thing came from this place of, when I was younger, of being responsible for this child and for myself, and knowing like, I can't fuck not like, there's someone's life here.
Wow.
And in my hands. And on top of that, like, not wanting to fuck up, like in the sense that I would hurt her, but also being like, I have to be so on top of my game, because at some point in time, like, I gotta escape this, and I have to be ready to, like, for the world and to be successful, and like to show to myself, like, I can make my dreams happen, because I was so focused when I was younger on like just sort of being a mom in a way, like before I wanted to. And I was like trying to run away from it.
It's great. I heard a little bit about this, and I want to talk about the movie that you're planning to make. I think it's called Sissy,
Yeah.
which sounds amazing. It's also crazy that, I don't know how old you are, but you're probably in your teens. Did you say it was 8 or 10? And you're raising this beautiful soul. That would have completely have changed your childhood. I'm just wondering, how do you be a school student, have dreams and aspirations, and still have to be a mum effectively? That is crazy.
It was tough. I pretty much lost my childhood when all of this happened. And it, for a long time, like, I didn't want to become a mom, a real mom, because I was like, no, I did that already. And, I'm trying to recapture my childhood now, not like take on more responsibility. And then you become a parent. I don't know. Are you a parent?
No, not yet.
Okay. Well, if you become a parent, you'll realize like you actually get to live your childhood over again with them. So I just didn't realize that.
Oh, that's a nice take. You're smiling. Sorry for interjecting. The way that you spoke about it, you can understand going through that, how you wouldn't want to go through that experience. But when you spoke about what you just did, then you're smiling, and that's awesome.
Yeah, it's so much fun. You don't realize how much joy having a child is going to bring into your life, but it just does. It brings so much happiness. So yeah, I mean, it really affected me in this profound way. And so that's in part why because before, when I was younger, I always said I was going to be a scientist. I always wanted to be a marine biologist. And then I found acting my last year of high school. And all of a sudden I had this place to put all these emotions that I had really suppressed about my family situation and my sister. And it gave me the sense of freedom, and also of like, oh, this trauma that I had, I can put to use here, and it makes me good. Like, it was this kind of gasoline I could pour on the fire, and people would be kind of mesmerized by it. And so it made me switch gears towards like, no, now I'm going to be all about like my needs, like recapturing my childhood through the play of acting. And so it really, really changed who I was.
Well, it sounds like a way to positively channel this energy that you're feeling as well, and unleash aspects of you, but a way for you to like channel this positive energy and kind of deal with what you're going with. Did you find it very healing?
I did find it healing in fits and spurts. Like, in the moment it was some kind of catharsis that felt good afterwards, but then in a weird way, like, I found myself holding on to it because it was this currency that only I had, that I thought gave me some kind of value. And then you kind of get stuck there thinking like, this is, you know, there's this line in the movie Honey Boy. Have you seen that movie, the Shia LaBeouf movie?
No.
It's about his like traumatic relationship with his father, and he's going through therapy, and you know the therapist is really trying to help him work it out, and he says something like, he's like, oh, my father, the only good thing my father gave me was this pain that, you know, I took into acting and made me like volatile, and now you want to take it away from me, you know, by like healing himself. And so I kind of got stuck in that a little bit of like just marinating in it too much, thinking this is what made me special, you know.
I've heard about this, and I've gone through this to a degree as well, like the tortured artist, where we have to have the pain so that we can release something to the world and it's make us who we are. And, you know, it seems that everyone that I've spoken to on the podcast that's brought this up, it's, you know, it can help serve us to a point, but then we need to kind of let go and work on it. And because it just causes too much pain, and it doesn't actually, in my opinion, lead to a fulfillment of the creative goal. What actually made you decide to work on that? Because that's a hard conversation to have to oneself, just in itself, and then to actually act on it and work on it. That's a whole journey in itself.
Yeah, I just realized at some point, my fiance helped me realize this, that it was just holding me back. You know, it was holding me back in my profession, because it was like, hey, there's more colors in your toolbox than this, but you're just kind of stuck here, you know. And it was also holding me back in terms of my relationships with my family, you know, who at the end of the day, like my mom and my sister and my dad, they're well-meaning people who just kind of got lost in the trauma of everything that happened, you know. And I just had like a lot of resentment from my parents. And I got to this place where I realized, like, you know, I'm not gonna, they're my parents, you know, like, I don't want to have a contentious, like, resentful relationship with them. I want to have a loving relationship, especially as I consider becoming a parent. Like, I need to try to fix this so that I don't repeat it.
Oh, because, you know, like the cycles get passed on and passed on. So how did you actually, I know that we could speak about this for like months, but how did you actually do that? Because as I was alluding to before, family is very tough to work on in all natures. And, you know, it's very hard, and to put your hand up and want to change yourself, which is what you're doing already, but then you're also trying to navigate this relationship, which is added ammunition. What tools did you use? I know you're speaking about your fiance and stuff like that.
Well, therapy.
Yep.
Therapy was a big one. But then writing my script was a huge piece of the puzzle, not only because it helped me start to, it helped me kind of gain perspective and see the events of my life from like almost like a neutral, objective point of view.
Oh, that's amazing.
And see my like, my faults and flaws too with it. It wasn't just like things happened to me. It's also the way that I reacted that made things spiral out of control. Because the story of, you know, what happened beyond me just taking care of my sister is that, like, as we got older, you know, like I said, I ran from it, and I went to LA, and I sort of shirked that responsibility. And because I was the main person she leaned on, she really spiraled out of control. And she also developed, you know, bipolar disorder and schizoaffective. And our parents like just didn't really know what to do with her, and they were newly divorced. And so they put her in an assisted living facility for adults with disabilities. And she rejected it, rejected us, ran away with a boyfriend who thought he was the Wolverine, and
Wow.
became homeless and went missing, and nobody knew where she was. And so I realized, like, whoa, I was a part of this, you know. I wasn't the savior that saved her, and that I kind of was like patting myself on the back for, like, no, my rejection of all of this helped lead to this. And so in writing the script as well, it gave me perspective, but then it also made me want to confront everybody and be like, hey, I'm doing this project. I'm going to make this movie. And let me tell you what, I've been pretty silent about, like, I've just kind of swallowed my real feelings about everything. But here are my real feelings. And it made us start talking in a way that we never did before. And it's actually been so healing for everybody in the family, like across the board. It's amazing.
I am so proud of you. That is beautiful. And it's also a reminder to me and everyone that having these conversations are really important, but especially at a level like that, that's tough. And yeah, that's amazing. Another thing that sprung to mind, as you like pursuing your dreams and living your life, and then you've also got, you know, family and your sister, how were you able to like pursue your career and live your life while there's these other things happening as well? Because that's always going to...
It's been a struggle. I mean, because there's the major events, but then there's always something going on, and many a time, and that's part of what my film is about too, is like the my character like wanting just to focus on her dreams and her needs, and then the family always being like, but wait, we need you, and me being very fractured at times, my focus and my physical presence, like just having to turn down certain opportunities because like I'm in Denver looking for my sister who's homeless, like I can't be there right now, I'm sorry, and being very frustrated about that. But then at the same time being like, nothing is more important than her life, so what the hell am I like being frustrated that I'm missing this audition over, like she could die and I'm being so like petty about like, oh, my career, so but it's an ongoing struggle. It really is. Like, I'm her guardian now, and she's doing great. She's doing really great, but bipolar is like the nature of that. You have episodes and it comes around, and we sort of can understand it now enough to sometimes curtail it before it really gets out of control. But sometimes not. And then you just have to, I just realized, okay, it's about this right now. It's not about anything other than this. This is what requires like the most attention right now.
You have a very mature and wise perspective. How do you still balance the time? Like, I'm sure that's an impossible task to a degree, given family, work. How do you do it? Teach me your secrets.
Well, I think I suffer a little bit from this like chronic productivity situation where it's like I have my book that has my lists. I'm very list oriented, from like macro to micro, like what am I doing today? But then I have these macro lists of like, in the next 6 months, I need to accomplish this. And let me break down those steps. Like, I need to do this first, this. So I always have like this tangible object. I can't do it on my computer either. It has to be in my handwriting, because somehow when it passes through my hand, like it sets in my mind in a different way. Yeah. So that's one thing. But then I also just like, I've recently realized that I need to value time off more and prioritize that more in order to be the most effective when I am working. And it's easier to do that. It's not easy, but it's easier to do that with my son around, because when he gets off from school, like, he wants to hang out and snuggle and go to the park. And so I think I am able to balance everything by taking time off as well.
I'm a firm believer that when we switch off, more ideas come in, for example. And I know that you also, I think you've got a production company, but just as an example, if I'm writing a lot and let's just say I'm spending 5 hours in my room, if I go out and see a friend and I'm in the moment with the friend, if I'm going for a walk and I'm not necessarily thinking about the screenplay, I'm actually re-energizing myself to a degree. And then when I come back, I'm actually better at doing the task because I'm doing different things. It's like a rebalance for me. And it sounds similar to you as well, that you're able to be in the moment and then that can help as well.
Totally. 100%. I have so many ideas that come from like not thinking about it, yes. Particularly when I go walking or running or whatever, like a lot of stuff comes up. But Yeah, I think that's very crucial, because otherwise, I think the work can become, it's like similar to the acting. Like I said, if you're trying to hit all the notes, it sort of zaps the life out of it, And when you're just like so focused on, I'm doing this, and you don't have this spontaneity of life come into your life while you're making it, then you'll lose that element.
That's happened to me 1,000 times, but even like with screenwriting, for example, if I'm writing and I'm not like channeling the creative aspect and I'm just using the logical, which you definitely need, then I just feel like I need to hit this because the screenplay, this needs to happen in act one, and then this needs to happen, and then this needs to happen. And I'm not actually being in the moment. I'm being somewhere else. Whereas when I'm just writing free flowing ideas, that's when I feel more energized, more creative. And then the task in itself becomes a lot better.
Yeah, every time, my first draft of my screenplay is always fuck structure. I'm going to sit here and I'm just going to imagine the scene and see where it takes me. Like, you always know kind of where you're going to end up with the story, and where you're going to begin. It's the whole thing in the middle that's really the journey. And so I just try to take the journey with my imagination and don't judge it based on structure or character needs or any of that stuff. Just see where it leads. And then after I have a draft of where do I go next, then I'll be like, okay, is this really, am I hitting rock bottom here? Like, is there the turn? Like, have I developed my characters, like, wants and needs and that, like, whatever, all that stuff.
Yep.
But I think that's really crucial, even if I end up throwing out a lot of that before the end product, but because it becomes like, I get moved by it instead of like kind of, solving a formula.
Well, there's nothing more rewarding from a screenplay perspective that when you're just writing and then, you work at it, and then you see this scene, you're like, yes, this is the perfect scene. But once again, the magical theme of not judging ourselves, that is crucial. I want to expand more on this. If I'm not an actor by any means, but if I'm doing improv, for example, and in the moment, if I'm judging myself, then I'm losing it. I'm not being grounded. I'm not being present. The actual performance isn't as good. And it's made me think from the improv perspective that even when you're having a conversation or I'm playing basketball or anything, when I come from the judging aspect, everything's worse, and it's natural, but it just takes away from the moment. But hearing you talk about this concept makes me, and it will make everyone else feel like, first of all, it's so normal, but two, we can get out of it and it's fine because nothing's perfect. There's no such thing as perfection, which is what you were talking about before.
Yeah, and believe me, that's another theme in my script. Like, I have tried to be perfect, and not mess up and take it all on, and I can do it. And it kind of buried me, it's like sort of zapped the joy from my life, and in my work too. And my husband, will remind me, because it's like sort of my go-to. He'll be like, perfect is the enemy of creativity, is what he says. Ooh. And it's so true. But I'll tell you this, that it's not like when I do my work, or particularly an audition, let's say, like, oh, I'm able just to do that right off the bat. No, it's a lot of trying to be perfect and then being like, let it go, like getting so exasperated, catching a feeling and being like, let's just go. And then all of a sudden you're like actually in the moment and it's alive and you're like, okay, that was one.
Well, awareness is key. You being able to catch it, because I'm sure that when you were doing that years ago, you probably weren't catching it at the time and being able to deal with it. Now you're picking it up a lot quicker.
Yes. Yeah. I can feel it, like you really can feel the difference between like riding the wave or, trying to make sure you're getting up there and you're going to like push through it. God damn it. So,
sorry,
no, it's just, no, it's just, so it's like, it's a sensation that is when you are actually living in that sort of realm, it feels great. It feels, you lose time.
Oh, yes. To me, that's being so in the moment that you don't know anything else that's happening besides being right there and then. This leads to another interesting concept. The life of an actor, you get rejected a gazillion times to every yes. How are you now, given we've spoken about perfectionism, when you get that no?
It depends. Like, I'm at a place where sometimes I'm the one delivering the no, like meaning I will get an audition and I'm like, this just is not inspiring to me, and I'm not going to go out for it. And not like I don't need the job, I need the job, but it's hard, especially if it's something that I really loved or I put myself out there for, or I thought the work was really good. It's still hard, but I always think, these things tend to happen for a reason. And right now, like for example, I've gone out for a couple of things recently. It's been kind of quiet, and I got close, but then I didn't get it. And it's frustrating, but at the same time, there's other things going on in my life. Like my husband has a job, or I'm really focused on making this film this winter, to where I'm like, if I got this job, I wouldn't be able to do that. And so, I don't necessarily believe in the universe, but I kind of do. Like, I think, this is making space for me to do the thing I'm really about right now. So just stay on that track and don't worry about the rest.
I am in that alignment. So when you are feeling that, do you feel like the universe has your back and things are working out? Like, even just from an alignment perspective, when if you don't get a job, you can then do something else? Or is that something that is like ebbs and flows?
By and large, I feel like, you know what, I'm going to be okay. Like, I used to stress and sweat it a lot more when I was younger. Like, I would not be able to fall asleep at night being like, oh my God, what if I don't get this job? Okay, I need money. What am I going to do? Blah, 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 blah. And now I'll catch myself going into that, and I'll tell myself, you are doing this to yourself. This is not something that is happening to you. You are making it happen. So you can make it unhappen. You're going to be fine. You're not going to need to get a 9 to 5, which is like the thing that scares me the most.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Yeah.
Yeah. And don't worry, just keep doing what you can do. And so I generally feel like life's going to be okay. You're going to be taken care of.
I also think that when people have a strong, like, positive outlook, you see the world in a different way, and that allows in the opportunities. Whereas if you come from a negative outlook, it's hard to even appreciate the positives because you're only focusing on one aspect. And I learned, and I don't always apply this, but I remember just asking like friends, like, what do they see when I can't remember the situation? And I thought it was a really great situation because I ended up getting a result. It may have not been the result I wanted, but at least I got the result and I wouldn't wait a few months. And the other person was so upset. And I found it so interesting that we can see the same thing and have completely different outlook on it.
Yeah.
And I think that, we can't always just be positive all the time, but it's certainly from what I've heard from people like you and everyone on the podcast and just outside of in my life, that when we have a positive outlook, we can appreciate some of the beauties that the world or the universe or whatever you want to say has to offer. So I like
Totally. I have a dear friend who has a lot of anxiety, and it makes them see the world in a pessimistic way. And it's the same kind of thing where I'm like, oh, whatever the event may be, like, oh, that's great. And he's like thinking of all the ways in which it could be bad. Like, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, you're sitting here twisting yourself in a pretzel, worried about all the things that could happen or why this result is less than perfect. And look at all that energy you're thinking. Like, what if you use the equivalent energy on, like, okay, well, now what's another step we can take just to get a little bit further, in whatever our agenda is. It's just like, it's destructive. It's not really constructive energy.
And also based on what you're saying, it's like rewiring your brain. Like when you catch yourself when you're being a perfectionist, for example, and, we have all that negative talk, when you catch yourself and say, it's not actually this, you're actually changing your brain. It's like a muscle.
Mm-hmm.
You get stronger and stronger and stronger each time. And I know that, like, for example, with anxiety, just like speaking to people over the years, they didn't think they had the tools, but something like what you just mentioned, it might seem so small, but it pays massive dividends. And it's just the awareness and catching it and being able to more positive self-talk. So I think you're an expert in that regard. So Your friends
Well,
more
I don't know
likely.
about that. I don't know, but I definitely, I just don't like the way it feels to be there, you know? And I always, every time I get into a negative place of worry or whatever it is, or judgment, or I'm not good enough, I just remind myself, this is your one life and it's pretty fucking short. So are you really going to spend it making yourself miserable, or are you going to try to like give yourself the best life you can?
Oh, have you ever considered doing a TED Talk? Because right there, you've got it. And I know you're going to bring that into Sissy, for example, and just want to tie up a few things about that, because thank you for bringing up that story. It's crazy and it's amazing that you've had an experience like that and you're speaking in such a positive way. But the way that you talk about how you're willing to rise above certain challenges, and I know I've only heard a tiny snippet and I haven't been there in your life, but just to want to go up and beyond. And then the next level, there's many levels, but the next layer is that you want to show it to people. And I know that one of your intentions is that it will help people. Even if they haven't had an experience like that, there will be similarities. And I've watched a few of your, I've seen like videos and talking about it, and I think it's really important. But one thing I want to say on that is you said something which when I read it or heard it, I was like, this is the best thing ever. You mentioned that your sister taught you to live life well. I'd love to, I know we can talk about that for ages as well. I'd love to just hear a little bit about what that means to you.
Well, my sister, based on the events that have happened to her in her life, she has all the permission in the world to be just miserable and depressed and heartbroken and feel like she's nothing, you know. But she is not like that. She is a bundle of optimism and just a pure heart. And just even the quality of her voice is just like light and playful, you know. And not to say that she has not experienced darkness. You know, she had a period of time in her life when she was cutting, you know, and was also suicidal. And so it's not like she's oblivious to what's going on. She just seems to have made a choice. Like she told me the other day, she said, you know, Shannon, I'm over the dead parent thing. Oh, wow. And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, you know, for a long time, I would think about it and I would get really sad and I think, why me? And now, you know, it's like it happened. And instead I have you, you know, and I have mom and dad. And so I'm happy for that, you know, and so I'm just tired of being sad about it. And that's a pretty, you know, I'm sure she's still sad about it, but like she's consciously making a decision to embrace happiness, whatever that looks like for her. And it's amazing. And it's very inspiring to me. And it's a big piece too of why, like, I can't give up on her, you know, like even when there have been times, and it's like hard to admit this, but truth, like where it's just another thing and another thing and another thing where you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Like I'm so burnt out, you know, like I remember the light that she is. And I'm like, I can't let that light die.
It sounds like this beautiful, like innocence in a sense. It's so nice that when there are extreme challenges that you're able to see the light and the positivity, and to see her as also like somewhat of a teacher as well. When we hear these stories, like in the news, we never talk about like the positive aspects. And you've been talking about positive, and not even in framing as a positive, you genuinely see the light. And I think that's so awesome. And I know it'd be very tough. And yeah, it's, as I said before, I think it's awesome that you want to bring this out. Are you making it? Where are you at with this?
So where we're at with it, we made a short film version of it last year. And I just completed it in January because I've never directed before. I've produced and wow. And I have other screenplays and one that's optioned right now, but nothing that's been produced. So I made the short film version of it to communicate my vision and tone and the central theme. And then after I finished it, I sent it out to a number of producers, including George Parra, who was a sort of a mentor of the project. Like before I started directing, I contacted a bunch of people that I had worked with who I really admired, like Sean Ryan and a lot of different people. And George was one of them. And so he said, look, I want to see it when it's done. And I sent it to him and he called me immediately and he said, oh my God, you killed it. Like I had very low expectations because it was like, oh, this actress wants to be a director. How cute. And then he was like, but no, it's like, it's amazing, you know? And he said, so what are you doing with it? And how can I help? And then he brought him on board as a producer, and George executive produced Silver Linings Playbook and Nebraska and American Hustle. Like he's done amazing projects. He's been around in the business for a long time. So he's on board. We also have hired a line producer and we've done a schedule and a budget. We're aiming to shoot in Utah in the winter. Because we really need winter as like a character in the story. It's a threat in the story, and I don't like want to manufacture snow. You know, it's just like too much to deal with. I'm sure we'll have to do some of that, but and now we're in this sort of catch-22 of needing to attach a great actress for the mom character, which is the second lead, in order to help secure our financing to get like our minimum guarantees. Like if we have someone of this level, then we'll get a minimum guarantee. But then it's like, you know, they want their money, you know, before not all of them, but it's like, that's sort of just the nature of the beast. So that's where we're at. But we've brought on another producer who specializes in financing and distribution. Actually the director of that project, Segfault. So he's going to help get us distribution beforehand and get our minimum guarantee so we can get that actress. And so hopefully we'll be shooting in Utah in probably next January.
That is very exciting. And also like from the screenwriting perspective, when you like lay everything down on the paper, this is not just a regular story. This is a story really important to you. How do you kind of manage that? Because you need money, you need people to do it. A lot of it's out of your control in a sense, because it's very hard to get something made, especially which is what you're doing. Has there been like a push and a pull, or you still been able to do everything that you want, or how do you kind of balance it? Because it's an emotional project.
Well, you know, I think that part of the value of the project is that it's based on a true story. Now, like the characters are not called Shannon and Aaron, my sister's name. You know, they're different names because I have taken some dramatic licenses in order to make it, you know, totally work and like compress time and stuff like that. But all the events of the story are real. But part of what I think people see as like the value is that this is a true story. So they're less inclined to mess with it and say, well, let's not have the character do this. Let's have her do this. And let's let the mom be this age instead. It's like, that's not what this story is. Now that being said, like we're just starting to go out to, you know, financiers and distribution companies. So who knows what they'll say in the end. But I think so far it's been easy to hold on to my vision and the truth of the story, because that's part of its cachet. And in fact, I never wanted to play the main character myself. I actually cast another actress for the short, and then she had to drop out like 2 weeks before production because she got another film. And I looked for another actress and I just couldn't find anyone that I thought fit it. And my producers were like, duh, it's you, like play the role.
There's your sign. Yeah, that's the universe.
Yeah. And even now going into the feature, I was like, I'm not going to play this character. Let's get somebody, you know, who business wise makes a little bit more sense. And I showed it around to a bunch of my producer friends, like big producers, and they've all unanimously said, no, it's you. Like, here's your proof of concept. It's amazing, and it's your story. It should be you.
That is
so people want to embrace the sort of truth of it all, you know.
I think that's amazing, and also kudos to you and credit to you for so many people seeing your talents as well. That's also really awesome, especially a producer, because they obviously believe in the story, but the role of producers to make money. So that's an added layer of a credit as well. And I know that you've started a production company. Am I right on that? Or you working?
Yes. Yeah. My husband and I, we actually had one a number of years ago called Filament Features that we had with another producer. That's no longer in existence. But then my husband and I started circus productions for the short, and that's what we're going to do for the feature. And we have a couple other films that we're, in various stages of development that we're going to produce. But yeah, that name came around because when we were shooting the short film, our son, who was 3 at the time, like all of a sudden we were just busy, and we had to get a nanny, and he like couldn't understand what we were doing. And so we explained it to him like, Mommy and Daddy are making a circus, and like all these people are coming, and it's going to be this event. And so whenever we would go off to work, he said, "Are you guys going to make the circus?" And we said, "Yeah." And so then that's like, let's call it that.
So why the change? Or is it you focusing on something else? You had the Filament and now the circus, or is that a different concept?
Well, Filament we had with another partner, and Filament we started in 2012, and we had a number of successes with some short films and music videos that went viral, and co-produced some films. But to be quite honest with you, we got really close to producing a feature film. I think our attention just was kind of diverted a little too much. Like I don't think we believed in ourselves enough to just pursue the story that we wanted to tell with us as the directors or whatever, the writers. And we started like producing other people's content a lot. And we didn't like always believe in it like wholeheartedly. And then we had this film that we liked the script, but we knew like we felt like we weren't big enough to direct it. We weren't big enough to star in it. So we were just producing it. We got close to having it made. And then this gentleman who was our connection to our financing passed away of a heart attack randomly.
Wow.
Sadly. And we're literally about like a week before money going to escrow and everything. And the guy who was financing it said, "I was really doing this for my friend, and now that he's passed away, like I'm not going to do it anymore." Wow. And it just took the wind out of our sails.
How did you recover from that? That is crazy, especially when it's about to happen as well. Money's involved, everything. How did you not like let the bitterness or whatever the correct word is how did you move forward from that?
Well, we didn't recover from it. The company, like we let it go basically. And we kind of all just started doing our own things. And my husband's an actor too. And so both of us really just kind of went back to acting mostly and sort of gave producing a break. But I kept writing. Like I wasn't writing Sissy at that point. I had another project that I was writing. And then I just came to this point where I thought, I miss making stories. Like it's fun to be an actor, don't get me wrong. And when you get a great role, it's like, it's such a high to do that. But you just have such little control in the end. And I thought, God, I have these stories I want to tell, and no one's going to tell them except me. So I just kept writing, and I was working on another project, and then I realized that I needed to do Sissy first, that this was going to be my big growth opportunity, and I couldn't pass it up.
That's amazing. And also it sounds like you did have the belief, because although it may have not worked out there, it gave you like clarity in what you need to do as well. So I'm not putting words in your mouth, but it does sound like although that's a crazy experience, that it allowed you to reevaluate what was important for you. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, totally. I did have the belief. Having done it, like our first project was a World War II short film that we decided to shoot in German and Russian. None of us spoke German or Russian.
That would have been
and
hard,
it had full like battle sequences with tanks and explosions, and like we were like, after we did that and literally almost killed ourselves making it, I just realized we can do anything, we're not necessarily going to be super knowledgeable about it at first, but you'll figure it out on the way, and you're definitely going to make mistakes, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. And I just knew, like, with my writing and directing, like, I'm not going to be the best director out there, but I have a point of view. I have a passion for it, and I can make something that's worthy of being seen.
That's a nice full circle, especially talking about perfectionism, and to come to a realization where there's a lot of stakes on the line. One, with producing the script's the most important thing in my mind, and then you're directing it. To just even say it doesn't need to be perfect, but you're still good enough. Wow, that's awesome. That's tough when there's that many stakes. So yeah, you've obviously done a lot of work in that regard, because that would scare me.
Well, I think if you're going to direct, in my mind, you have to come at it from that perspective, because you are definitely going to make mistakes on a daily basis. And in part, sometimes the mistakes are actually, if you're able to get them on camera, are some of the best parts of the story. You're sort of looking for these accidents in a way, and facilitating an environment that allows for that, kind of humanity in it. But at the same time, like, if I think I'm going to come in here and like shake up cinema with my vision, I'm not saying that I won't, but then it's kind of like I'm doing it for the wrong reason versus like just telling the story to the best of my ability and through the lens that I want the audience to see it. And if I just stay on those goals, like I'm going to make something that will take them on a journey. And that's really what I care about in the end.
I like that take. So what's the balance? Because this is an impossible balance for me. I want to be creative and only do things that I want to do. And I don't want to do anything that's not in alignment with me. But then we also need to make money and live. So it's always a tough balance. And it sounds like you've figured this balance out a lot better than the average person, even with what you said about the other production company, how you didn't really believe in some of those films. And then also you're now saying no to certain things. How have you been able to figure out this balance?
You like financially in order to keep the dream alive?
Yeah.
Well, okay. So a couple of things. One, I realized at a young, when I first started acting, like I got this big job a year and a half into my career of the OC. And before that, I was, still had a 9 to 5, and I was going out for auditions. And once I got the OC and I got like the sort of financial cushion, I said, I don't ever want to go back to doing a 9 to 5. And so what I'm going to do, because I know this business is very fickle and it might be 2 years, maybe more between jobs. So I'm going to make sure I budget and save for 2 years worth of liquidity. So that way, if I don't get a job in that time, I'm not sweating it. I'm going to be okay. I can stay like in my groove and keep pursuing my thing. So I think that's a big thing is being realistic about what you need to survive, and then keeping that as a savings if you can. It takes time to build up to that, but whatever amount you can, do it.
It's also super hard because you're very early in your career. I don't know how strong your financial literacy is, but you're young. With 99.99% of people, we're not good with money when we're young, but to still have that foresight, was that advice from someone, or you just figured out this is what you need to do?
I just figured it out. We didn't grow up with a lot of money, which is why, I had to take care of my sister, and my parents filed for bankruptcy at one point. And I just saw the way that they were the choices they were making that brought us to that point. We didn't have a lot of money, but they didn't want to live like that. And so anything that they wanted, they would buy on credit, and I remember them taking me to the malls, like when I was younger, and being like, go, I was afraid to say that I liked anything because they would just buy it. And I knew, are we going to have money for milk? What's like, we can't live like this. And so as I became an adult, I had a very different, viewpoint on that. Like, as you can tell, like there's nothing on my walls. Like I'm super minimalist. Like I don't spend my money on stuff. And so I kind of learned that from them of like, I don't want to fall into a financial hole like that. yeah, so I just kind of figured it out. And then after time in the business, realizing that, you know, it could very well go a year to 2 years between jobs, that I really needed to have that cushion in order to feel whole and not be super stressed. But the other thing that I have that I would advise anyone that you can do is real estate, is renting. We actually have a house in LA that used to be where we lived, but then we moved to the East Coast. We thought, well, if we don't have to sell it, let's not sell it, and we rent it. And you know, and then now we have a 4 unit investment property in Pennsylvania that, you know, was relatively cheap to get into because it's Pennsylvania. We just rent it out and we get passive income that way. And it's not like enough to support us fully and our whole family, but it is enough to provide some stability. So that way we know our bills are going to get paid and, you know, we don't have to stress.
That's a really nice take. And also, I would imagine it would also help your acting. Like if you've planned out a certain amount of time, because when you walk into an audition room, for example, and I've heard people on the other end, when you're desperate to get the role, they can smell it.
Yeah.
Okay. You've got a whole life experience. What just came through?
As soon as you try so hard to get it, and it's the laws of attraction, right? Like, think of like a girl, you know, who maybe you're interested in. As soon as she's like, oh my God, can I come over? Blah, 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 you know, like all into you, it kind of like repels you a little bit. And it's the same thing with that. And so, but if you're like, hey, here I am, you know, do you want me? Then it makes them lean into you and go, what's this guy about?
The keenness factor.
So,
have you had moments where you've walked into rooms, you're like, I need it. And then was this a lesson, or you also once again just kind of known this? Because a lot of guests have spoken about where they've had similar moments and they're like, fuck, I really want this, so I really need it. And it doesn't work out. And then the next audition, they let go and they're like, whatever. They want me, then they get it. It's like a nice little like seesaw of experiences.
yeah, I have had moments where there was one job in particular I can recall where I really, really wanted it. And I think I just kind of took the character to too much of an extreme to show like this would be my take on it. And it might have been a little like, you know, it was a television job. It's like, whoa, this is pretty this is pretty out there for this character. You know, I think I pushed them away too much with my choices, and I got really close to it. So it was a real bummer. But then, you know, like a job like The Right Stuff, that project we were talking about before, I really wanted that too, to the point that I made that audition happen. Like I found out about that role through working with my husband on material for the same project. And I said, I am right for this. This is me. Like, get me an audition. For weeks I hounded. And so when it came time, you know, I was a little desperate too, in the sense that I hadn't worked for a little bit. And, but I had spent so much time on figuring out the character, and like, and from a playful way. Like I would go into our studio and get all dressed up like her and like have imaginary scenes with people and stuff, that I just kind of knew who she was. And when I came into that room, as opposed to being like, let me show you all the things, like I was just being that person. And she was similar to me in certain ways, that it just worked that time, because I've had this different kind of confidence that wasn't like, do you like me? It was like, this is what I'm doing.
Sounds like a knowing. We had another actor on this podcast, and I think it was for Hunger Games, and she actually went out and practiced like the bow and arrows, and because they thought that she looked, I can't remember the wording, but maybe like too pretty. And she's like, no, that she's a tomboy and she's not just like the pretty blonde. And so she went out and actually played this role, and it didn't come from a place of desperation. She knew that she was this role. So she practiced and she trained in it. So then when she walked into the room, she knew that she was the right person, and she got the job. And I thought that was so amazing, because I saw her in a different way as well. And I think it was very hard for her to get the audition. And she just went in there, had this confidence, this knowing, which sounds like you had, and it just happened. And that doesn't always happen, but it's nice to know that that you got a positive result for putting in hard work as well.
Yeah, that audition in particular, God, that was so like affirming because from seeking it out, myself to getting it, like I just knew, I said, I can bring this to life in a way nobody else can. And I know that 100%. And there are certain roles like that come out where it's like, I get this person, like other people will understand aspects of it, but I can really see them. And this is my take on it instead of, let me show you what I think you're looking for.
That's very awesome. And then on that, when you do put in the work and, maybe you progress, I know each situation is different. Do you have like tactics to deal with the disappointment of not getting the role?
Yeah, my main tactic is that I give myself 24 hours to feel like shit, like I don't try to will away those feelings. I'll cry, whatever, whatever it is. I'll eat a lot of cake. I'll drink too much.
What type of cake?
Carrot cake.
Oh,
you don't like it?
No, I was about to say no wonder. That's the worst cake. Sorry. I like cake. I don't like carrot cake, but
I love cake. I like all cake. I mean, basically, you can put whatever in front of my face, and at that point in time, I'll eat it. Or any point in time, I'll eat it. I'm
okay.
a sweet tooth person.
I'll make a mental note.
But yeah, I don't try to deny my feelings about it, and then they usually cycle out by the next morning, and I'm like, all right, what's the next thing?
Oh, that's awesome. Me and everyone on this podcast have like spoken about burnout, for example. And I know that no's can really impact one's like mental health, for example. And it's a weird profession because you don't get that many no's in any other profession. I would assume, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that you've had moments of burnout. I know you've also spoken about family, which would probably also come in. Have you had moments of burnout, and how did you kind of succeed or push through, or whatever the right word is?
I don't think I have had moments of burnout. I certainly have had big moments of real depression over it, and just feeling like, God, there's no fucking build, in this business like there is in every other business. Like you climb the corporate ladder or you get this position, you've been there for long enough, then you get the next one. It's like, it does not work like that in this business. And that is very frustrating because you can be in it for 20 plus years and feel like you're right back at the beginning, but you're not, is the reality, is you're not. And I don't think I have had burnout because I love it. And it's like, I don't want to give up, it's like, this is what I'm about, even though I've had some like not so supportive moments, from my parents about it at times. But
I can imagine that everyone talks to. I'm sorry for laughing, but it's like 90% of parents like, what is this thing that you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, they were supportive of it in the beginning, like, sure, great, honey, go for it. You can do whatever you set your mind to. And then there have been comments through the years of like, oh, like if I have a disappointment, like, yeah, it's never going to happen for you, and you're just like, fuck you, bitch. Like, but I think they think they're coming from a place of like helping to encourage you to move on, and like apply your talents elsewhere. Or I don't know. Or like maybe it's just a reflection of how they see themselves. And so,
I think it's bad. So, sorry for cutting off. And also through my experience, parents don't really understand the nature of this beast. It's like completely out of and I don't know what your parents did, but it sounds like they weren't remotely really even in this industry. And it's also not stable. You talked about the corporate ladder. There's no inverted commas stability, even though that concept doesn't make any sense to me. I used to be an accountant, so I understand the difference. But yeah, it's just a reflection of them in case anyone else is experiencing that. Because I've also had that, but my parents have always meant the best. It's just... Yeah,
I don't think that they're trying to be malicious, but it's I do think it's the way they see themselves coming out and being projected on you, which only makes me be like, that's not going to be me.
Yeah. Well, you've broken so many cycles as well. So yeah, within your family as well. I would imagine though that they would still be very proud, just even looking on paper, and that's only a tiny aspect. Like you got an amazing resume, and then even to go into the directing and the writing and the producing and all the other things that you're doing, that's scary when it's a new thing. Especially, I assumed you started as an actor, for example, and then you're trying all of these different things. And it could be easy to, inverted commas, stay in your lane, but you've gone out and actually done multiple different things, which is also really awesome.
It's fun, it's fun. And in some ways I feel less pressure to succeed than I do in acting, because it's like, yeah, this is my first time, directing. I mean, not like that I don't feel pressure to, you know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't have as much like self-identity, riding on it, to where if I just fail miserably, I'm going to be like, oh my God, what have I done with my life? But I just wanted to say something else about the burnout thing, which I think is really important for anyone wanting to do this business, whether it be any kind of creative business, because there isn't that climb. I think I have avoided burnout because I realized how cyclical things are. They're very much like a wave, that there's all this momentum generating this wave. And you get to the top and it crests and you get that great job in that moment. You feel like you're on top of the world. Like, I'm a star, mom, look at me, right? And then inevitably, like any wave, is going to fall and crash on the beach, and you're going to feel like a piece of shit and you can't get arrested, but all that's happening is that, it's just being pulled back in to cycle back into another wave. And if you can keep waiting to ride the next wave and accept that there's going to be a sort of recovery period of regaining your strength, recalibrating your approach, figuring out who you are now, because who you are now is different than who you were a year, 2 years ago, whatever, you'll get another wave to ride.
Well, that's an awesome perspective. And also, when there are those moments of no work, because being an actor is a lot, like mostly completely out of your control. Yes, there's things that you can do. You can work on your skill and your craft and meet people and blah, 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 blah. But also writing, that's something that you can control. Like when you had your production company or directing, or you've got now other skills which help with that as well. And I think that's really important, especially as an actor, because to me, that's also very scary, because you can just wait all day just for someone to call you. But you've got these other skills to kind of also help you managing that. Also the moments of no work, you're putting yourself in the best position to succeed in this field as well.
Yeah. And so much of that is just about not being afraid, like I didn't know how to produce. I didn't know how to do all this stuff. I just decided I was going to start trying it, and that I was going to make a lot of mistakes and figure it out. And, I used to be so afraid, and I'm still afraid of like I called Kathy Bates' agent the other day, and I'm like, like breathing really heavy and like going over my pitch, like over and over and over. Like, what if she asked me this question, blah, blah, blah. Like I was really afraid, but past me when I was much younger might not have ever made the call because I was too afraid. And me now is like, so what if they say no? There's 1,000 other people who could do this. I don't want them, but no, them saying no is no different than me not calling. So I might as well give myself the chance of a yes.
It's a very important perspective, because I think I also, like younger, didn't put myself in the best position to succeed because I was scared of that no. But then even like doing a podcast or writing or just everything, even outside of the creative arts, you get a few no's you don't really like, you care, but you move on. It's not like that big of a deal. You do other things. But it's amazing, like just reflecting back on my life, what a no would potentially have done in my mind. Now, like, whatever, you're gonna get a lot more no's probably before you get a yes, but that yes is gonna put you in a much better place in your life. But if you was too scared at the no's, you wouldn't even be able to get that yes.
Yeah, so true. It's so true. And the only people who don't get yeses in their lives are the people who kept themselves from getting them, who gave up on themselves because they were too afraid of what it might mean about their identity or whatever. So really, it's like you can only fail if you give up.
Yeah, I agree. And it's also back on the projecting side. I'm not sure how much you've had to deal with hate or haters. I know that you mentioned OC in a previous podcast, which we will talk about. But the projecting side, the only people like in my life and the guest's life is that it's from people that haven't really been willing to put themselves out there. Those are the ones that are like biggest critics. And you're like, but then you realize, well, this only happened to me on a very small scale, but speaking to so many people on the podcast, you realize that do we want the approval of those people? No, it doesn't. I'm just wondering.
No, but it's still hard to hear, like, I had a lot of haters on that show. I mean, on every show, I'm sure there are a lot of haters, but that's what I learned from that show is to not pay attention anymore. Like if you're going to pay attention to the hater, like if you're going to look for the accolades, you should like pay attention to the haters as well. And the truth is like, who spends like a lot of their time going online to talk about a character on a TV show? Like they don't have a whole lot going on in their life if that's what they're doing.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm not bringing anyone down who wants to do that. I'm just saying like they probably have a lot less experience in real life than you do going out there trying to make your dreams happen. So why do you give a fuck what they think? Whether it's good or bad.
I would imagine because that was very early on in your career and the OC is an enormous show. That would have been like fucked to deal with at the time. I know that we've got this amazing perspective now and you're great now, but just the nature, and I watched that show, but so many people are saying that. And also just as a side point, people hate you. I don't know if you see it this way. It means you did a great job. It's because they believed you being the character. Do you see that or probably not at the time?
Well, at the time it was everything, if I got criticism about, oh, I hate Lindsay, she's not right for Ryan, such and such character, like I wouldn't take that to heart as much because in a way, I saw it as like, oh, they're into the story, but then it was a lot of like, stupid adolescent stuff like, oh, she's so ugly, or like, oh, I just don't believe anything she says, or what, whatever, all this stupid stuff. And after my first episode or two aired, and I would go online to see the fan reaction, and I started getting to those places, and I started feeling bad about myself. That's when I thought, I'm not coming back on here again. This is it. And I just had to tune it out because otherwise it interferes with my ability to do my job, so.
And you also people don't need that, especially, and they're not providing with positive advice that you can apply moving forward. Yeah, wow.
There's nothing you can do with that, You're like, I'm sorry my face is the way it is. Like, if I could do something about it, I mean, I wouldn't, but it's like,
I know what you mean.
It just, I don't know, like especially physical appearance stuff. Like I never got that. It's like, you are born this way. Like, it's not as if somebody has intentionally shaped you. Like you've done this to yourself. Why are you ripping on someone for that?
But even on that, like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You can be the most beautiful human, voted the most beautiful person in the world. There's always going to be someone that doesn't like your look. And I think that's also really important, especially on a show like that where it appears looks are important because everyone on that show from memory was quite a beautiful person. But it's just funny why someone would actually like target you. Not funny, but you know what I mean. It's ridiculous. And I'm glad that you have been able to move forward from that because I'm just imagining that amount of eyes, that's a lot for a human to deal with, especially early on.
Yeah, especially when you're young and you are still like, making sure you look good in your skinny jeans and like care about all that shit that, as you get older and know who you are, you just don't care as much anymore.
I think that's very important. I also read this, and I never, ever, ever read the Wikipedia because I don't know if it's true, but this is a very common experience, especially with actors. I heard that you were replaced by another actor. Is that true? And just so everyone knows, every single actor has had this on the podcast. I think it was Moonlight.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll give a bit of a talk to it because it's one thing to obviously not get a role, but then when it's made a bit public, I'm sure that's added to a non-desired situation. What was your experience with whatever happened? I only read like a sentence on Wikipedia.
And I'm like, Wikipedia, like, why do you have to put that on my page?
I agree.
Yeah, that was a tough pill to swallow for certain. But made less so by the fact that that whole show, we shot the pilot, and when they decided to pick up the show, they completely reconceived of the show, and they kept one cast member, Alex O'Loughlin, who played the main character, and they recast everybody else.
Is that an Australian guy? Alex
He is,
O'Loughlin?
yes.
Yeah.
And they just changed the nature of it. Like, it went from something that was akin to, like, it was a drama like Beauty and the Beast, and it became more like a Buffy the Vampire Slayer-ish. Like,
that's a big change.
Yeah, it had more like lightness to it. And so it's like just the original vision did not work for that. And so it, I sort of was like, okay, it's not just me, it's this whole, like they even got new producers and new writers, like everything.
Wow. I haven't heard anything like that where they're literally getting rid of everyone.
Everyone except for the main character. And I think maybe some producers stayed on, like it was a Joel Silver show, and I believe he still produced it, but like some more of the creative types. And Joel had actually called me to tell me what was happening. He was like, look, it's not you, kid. You were great, but still it was tough because I sort of felt it when I was shooting. Like, I remember we went to go do stills, and I didn't feel it when we were doing the work, but when we were doing the stills, they just kind of wanted me to be something I wasn't. They put me in a blonde wig, and they were sort of trying to play up like sort of like sex pot quality to it, or like leading lady beauty, and I remember crying during the stills, and my makeup artist smoking a joint with me to calm me down so I could go back in. And then we had another problem, which my eyes were all red and I looked so stoned in the photos. But yeah, I sensed it then. It's like, I'm not really what they want for this role. And so it wasn't exactly surprising. But yeah, it was hard. Like, that's actually kind of something that in particular that I've learned to embrace about me, which is like, I'll see these roles that I think, oh my God, I love this. I want to do this. And then I just know I'm not who they're looking for a lot of these things. And I have to just accept that and then find where I do fit in. There's the characters you think you should play. And then there's how the world sees you.
I would also imagine, like, when you're first starting out, we want to, be the A-lister. We want to be on every movie, every TV show. And that's only possible for like literally like 5 people in the world. And yeah, you had an amazing career. You've done amazing things, but it's not possible to keep doing that all the time. And we've talked about the ebbs and the flows. Have you had to change your view of what success and happiness is for you in this business?
Yes. Yeah, I have. Because when I first came into it, I very much was like, I'm going to be, Bryce Dallas Howard in The Village. I'm going to be like, I would go home and watch these amazing movies and like, perform the scenes and monologues in my living room and be like, I'm going to be this person, And not that I haven't had like success in that way. And I've actually had, done these weird projects where I'm like, this is the one that's going to catapult me to fame. And then, something happens, like, it just doesn't take off, or the network's like, yeah, we're not going to air it anymore, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And so I have. And so for me now, success is really just getting up every day and still pursuing it and not giving up, and being able to be proud of the work I do, and ensure I work enough to where this is all I have to do. I told you I do the real estate thing too, but that's sort of very passive income, but like in order and how I'm spending my time, like I'm still doing this.
I know what you mean. It's a brilliant idea with the real estate as well. we had an actor, and asking him about his view of success. And he says just that he's able to get out of bed and do acting, that's what makes him successful. He never thought that he would be able to be an actor, given his life story, and wakes up and he puts his feet on the ground and he tries to remind himself he's lucky that he gets to do it, because being an actor is a crazy experience where the unemployment rate is always exceeding the employment rate. And you're one of the, I wouldn't even say lucky, but I'll say rare, because yes, there's a luck aspect, but you've deserved it, where you actually been able to work pretty consistently for, what did you say? It was like 20 years, which is crazy.
Yeah, like 20 years, yeah.
What have you noticed? Because I'm sure you've had friends along the way wanting to be, or they were actors and then for whatever reason, they've given up. Have you had many people like that in your sphere or you've seen?
Yes. Yeah. You know, actually people who I remember the most talented guy in my college program, he was a year or two ahead of me, super talented. Like you look at this guy and you're like, this is the next Daniel Day-Lewis. He, you know, he's not an actor anymore. And I'm only, and so many people like that, but really, like I said earlier, it's just because they gave up on themselves. Like it was either maybe the pursuit of acting was not really what they wanted in the end. And so that's the reason why they gave up. You know, I'm not saying it's just because they didn't believe in themselves. But the only people that I know who have not succeeded, you know, at acting in the sense that this is what they're doing on a daily basis or pursuing, are just the people who decided to give up. So that really to me is success. And that's what I'm trying to teach my son now too. You know, he's little, he's 4 years old, that failure is just a step towards success. And that if you show up and you do your best and you put all your heart into it, that's success. If you give up on yourself, that's failure. And so don't worry, you know, if you didn't run as fast as, you know, your opponent, or you didn't make a goal, or your artwork, you know, isn't as lauded as someone else in the class. Like, you put yourself into it, you're trying your hardest, like just keep working at it, you know, and this is how you get better at things. You don't get to the pinnacle without having a lot of stumbles along the way, and it's how you get there.
It's even the concept of like an overnight success. I'm butchering this, but an overnight success takes many years in the shadows. And
yeah,
your child hearing that would set him up. Was it he, right?
Yeah, boy.
Set him up for life, because it also takes away from the, you know, we talked about judgment and maybe negative self-talk, and realizing that it's just a natural process. And it just takes away so much of that mental chitter-chatter that we have as well. Like, it won't ever be something negative for him as well, which is awesome.
I hope not. He's still working with it. He's like me in that he's a perfectionist, but it does seem to be helping. Like he'll go to his coach, you know, after he had a class where he felt like he didn't score a goal, and he goes to her and he goes, you know, coach, failure is the greatest teacher.
That is so cute.
She just laughs, but
you know, I know it's a work in progress, but getting someone earlier is so crucial. And to me, the relationship with failure is something that it's such a macro concept, and there's other like emotional elements that come with it. But even just having this conversation early on, which is something every single person in the entire world will benefit from it. It actually changed the outlook on life. So I'm very happy that you've picked up on it early, you and your husband. We were also talking about Montessori schools, and this is really interesting to me because I always go on rants about our schooling system and how, you know, there's many positives and there's also many negatives. And I went to Montessori school for a few years. It didn't work out, not because of the school, but just because we had a teacher who apparently wasn't an actual teacher, long story short. What made you pick this type of concept? Because I think it's brilliant. Of my awareness.
Well, I could lie to you and say like I did so much intensive research on it, but frankly, we moved to the area and it was the closest preschool, and it had a great outdoor playground that he loved. And I knew about, you know, the methodology and the approach. And my brother-in-law, he went to Montessori, and his mother is a Montessori teacher, has been for a long time, and she's just like one of the sort of brightest lights I've ever known, and so joyous. And it just seemed like the idea of it being so self-driven, you know, like, what am I interested in doing, as opposed to, here's your lesson and, you know, sit down and we're going to do this. I mean, of course they have some aspects of that,
Yeah.
but it being self-driven and also like teaching very practical skills that are about cooperation. Like, now we're all going to clean up and you're going to sweep, you know. It just seemed like, oh, this is A, teaching him how to be his own engine, and B, showing him that in order to thrive in this world, you have to cooperate and you have to take care of yourself and your environment and other people in your environment. It's like, these are the basic elements of life. And I'd so much rather him learn these fundamentals at a young age rather than get into some kind of lesson plan that's about like fast tracking you to college, and now you're going to know how to write your name in 6 months and you're going to like be able to count to 50. It's like, you know, a bunch of information like downloading versus experiential ways of being in life.
I think that's so important, especially at a young age where we're developing, we're trying to like figure out what we like and what we don't like, but also a principle which isn't really talked about enough at school. I can't say all schools, where, you know, you're being in the world with other people, teaching empathy. That's what it sounds like. And I think at times we can kind of lack empathy. Everyone does this, but just being in that environment where it's not just like rote learning or this is the concept, I think that's very important. And especially at a young age, I know that I'm very happy that I had the Montessori, then I went back into, what do they call it, mainstream school, because it taught me a different way of thinking that I forgot when I was at school. Then now I'm trying to get it back, but just from a creative perspective as well. I'm not talking about like acting or just creative child, because all children have a crazy imagination, and whether that goes into sport or art or just how they see the world, it's really important. So anyway, that's my short rant. What we're going to do now to wrap up the podcast is to do a rapid fire segment. So the first thing that springs to mind, but if you need to take time, that's completely fine.
Okay.
So what is your biggest pet peeve?
Ooh, my biggest pet peeve, selfishness.
I'm not going to comment on them. Would you like to expand on that? Because everyone's selfish in their own way.
Yes, it's impossible not to be selfish, but when you really prioritize your wants, and I say wants over needs because needs are a different thing, over somebody else's, especially when that other person is trying to communicate with you like, I don't want to do this, or I don't have time for this, or whatever. That is a huge pet peeve of mine, because in part because of the way that I grew up, I feel like I had to do the reverse so much. And so when I feel like someone's doing it to me, like I had to be like, okay, I really need to do my homework right now, but you know, you need a bath and you need to go to bed, or whatever the case is. And so if I'm getting the reverse of that, like, well, I want this, and will you give me this attention? I'm like, I instantly just want to write the person off.
Yep. We're very similar in that regard. If you could gain any skill in the world, which one would it be?
Ooh, any skill. I don't know. That's a hard one. What would it be? If I could gain any skill in the world, this sounds so shallow, but surfing.
That's definitely not shallow.
I would love to. I mean, I'm like trying to think of like a really productive skill, like good negotiating or something, and like, sure, that's great. But if I could just like hop on a surfboard right now and ride a wave and just keep doing it over and over, I would definitely do that.
I do the same. I wish I could as well. We sort of answered this one. What brings the best creative content out of you?
I don't know if we did answer it, but the best creative content out of me is letting go of my ideas of what is perfect and what I need to show to communicate my ideas, and instead just finding a way to be present and put my attention on the other people in the room or on the story, instead of trying to show off my capabilities.
Funniest thing someone has tweeted about you or commented about you? I know that you probably don't look anymore, but is there anything that might spring to mind?
You know, I don't look, so I don't know. But a common thing seems to be, and this is kind of embarrassing and a little self-aggrandizing, but it's not meant to be. It's the only thing that popped in my mind, is I did this show called Prison Break, and my character used all of her assets to her advantage. And so there's like a nickname going around for my character called Prison Boobs. So I think that's pretty funny.
I'm glad that you could laugh. I was like,
Yeah.
what do you mean by all of your assets? And then I'm very slow. On that, because we spoke off air about strange questions that you've received. Was that a you decision, or was that a like producer or director's decision?
That was a me decision. In part, to be quite honest, I didn't fully know, the complexities of my character, but I knew that she was a bit of a manipulator. So I thought, well, how can what do I have to that end? And also because I think that Prison Break, I think, came after I got replaced for Moonlight.
Oh, no,
and I was like, okay, they want to see like the sexiness of me, because it's not something I'm like comfortable with. I'm like, so then I'm going to bring it in this role, And so I was like, I'm just going to like work this to my advantage, and it ended up working great for the character, what she ended up becoming. But yeah, it was sort of a reaction to being fired and wanting to have the most impact in my storyline as well.
I love it when you can talk about experience that didn't go to plan and then it's worked out probably way more, because Prison Break, maybe the biggest show, that was an enormous show. What were you thinking at the time? Because I'm sure your ego was spiraling. You would have had a massive audience, and I'm sure you would have jumped to different places. How did you deal with that?
Well, it's funny because that job was another one where I came in and I was like, this is what I'm doing with this. And I had this like real Southern accent that I didn't end up playing for the character. But because I made such like a choice that this was like my take on it, they just liked that I think I made this choice, and we're like, scrap the accent, but we like that energy. That I don't know. That show, I didn't get overwhelmed by the, oh my gosh, it's Prison Break. Like I had never seen it. I knew it was, a big show, but I think I remember the audition, I just felt more like excited by the material and this angle I had on the character. And so it just kind of fell into place because I wasn't desperate to get that job.
Oh, that's awesome. I like the full circle there. Last few, biggest regret.
Oh, my biggest regret. There's so many, right? I think, well, it's funny. Like, I'm glad that I am the age I am now as a parent, because I have my child in particular. And I know that if I had gotten pregnant another time, I wouldn't have my child in particular. Sometimes I wish I had been a little bit younger, just because of, energy. Like, it's just a real thing. Your energy dissipates as you get older. But I think beyond that, my biggest regret is I wish I'd gone to film school instead of theater school.
Ooh, how come?
Because you don't need to go to school to become a great actor. Like, I mean, I think you need to study, but you don't need to go to a collegiate program. And I just think that what I could have learned and experience I could have gained in film school, especially if I was able to go to USC, which is where I went for theater, I think I just would have gotten into the filmmaking side of it earlier. And I just enjoy it so much. I wish I would have had more exposure to that when I was younger.
What do you do for your mental and physical health?
I go running. I've been a runner ever since I can remember. I mean, literally since I was probably, 9 years old. And it's always been my escapism from the drama of life. And so if I'm just feeling overwhelmed, or even just like regularly, like I just try to go running, and it's not even good for my body anymore. Like I have knee problems and stuff. But it's such a reset that I have to do it.
I also read that you wanted to be an Olympian.
I did. Yeah. When I was younger, middle school to high school, I trained. Like, I don't mean I trained like, some program picked me up and, put me through the courses. I just self-trained, and I was on my track team, and my dad was actually a track athlete in one state when he was younger in high school. So he would train me, and I was sort of a little insane. I ran like 3 times a day. And but I also, it's interesting because it's something I really loved and I wanted to be great at. But then when I wasn't great at it, like I would get beat, I wouldn't allow myself to lose. So I would like all of a sudden come up with an injury, or like something was wrong, to where I was like, this is why I lost, not because I actually just wasn't the best runner. And I learned from that. Like, I don't want to be that person. Like, just accept, like, okay, this is where I need to improve, and try to work on that, instead of running away because it feels bad to not succeed in the way you expect to.
Oh, that's an awesome realization. We carry that on as well. Any advice you want to give people who want to try something different on you, but perhaps are a bit fearful of doing so?
Just that every time you get afraid, and it's going to keep you from taking the action you want to take, remember, this is your one life. And if you don't, I guarantee you, if you don't try it, at the end of your life, you are going to regret it. It doesn't mean it's going to turn out the way that you want it to, but like, do yourself the favor, give yourself that potential joy. Don't worry what the world thinks or what the outcome is. Like they say, it's like the journey, not the outcome. And it truly is, because you get so many highs just in the process of like finishing a draft of a screenplay, one person like, deciding they want to do it, or like a person coming to me like, that performance moved me so much and made me see myself in this way. It's like you find success in small moments of it, your work registering with somebody else, or just with yourself. And to deny yourself that because of your fear is just so sad.
Beautiful take. If you could go back into a time when you were first starting out, would you give the same advice, or would you give different advice?
If I could go back, I think I would probably give different advice, because I don't think that wasn't my problem, that I was too afraid, like I went for it. But I think I would give the advice of like accepting myself completely for who I am, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and realizing that all of those things are my currency, and not to only project forward the things I thought the world, valued me for, or saw were positive attributes, but that like, especially as a performer or anyone in the creative world, it's more often your darkness that people are drawn to and feel like they understand than it is your light, or your beauty, or whatever, that sort of superficial stuff. So I think I would have told, like, my advice would be like, embrace you fully and run with it.
Oh, wow. You could do TED Talks and all of these, and we can talk about these topics for a very long time. That was awesome. So this is my favorite question before we ask how people can follow you and keep up to date with you. What is the one question I should have asked you?
Oh, interesting. One question you should have asked me.
Often there's like 5 minutes of dead air space. I'll just cut that out. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe something like, what's my plan for the rest of my life moving forward? because, going back and giving myself advice is like, I can't do that, but what can I do moving forward? You go. Sorry.
How would you answer that?
So my plan for my life moving forward is to wake up every day, and first and foremost, before all my creative agendas, my most creative agenda is how to help my son thrive in this life. And by thrive, I mean, like, I like put this out there, like, I want my son to live a long life, to be surrounded by an expansive family, and with, multiple grandchildren, and to live a happy and fulfilled and purposeful life. So my plan moving forward is to try to do whatever I can to help support him towards that end, for the rest of my days and beyond, because I'm going to be this little spirit there on his deathbed, like, be like, here I am, Sonny, like, I'm still here. And beyond that, just keep the dream alive. Keep my dream alive every day, and just no matter what that looks like and where I am in my career or journey, I just want to keep it alive.
That is beautiful, and I love that you bring it back to family. Before we go, how can people follow you, keep up to date with you, and all of that cool stuff?
Well, I'm so I'm such a Luddite. I'm really not much on social media. I am on Instagram occasionally. Like, I'm one of those posters that I really only post like when I have, some kind of special work thing going on, or like I'm just not that engaged. But I do check it like at least a couple times a week. So you can find me on Instagram. I think my handle is Shannon M Lucio. And I post a lot about the film there. I have posted a lot about the film, and that's where a lot of information about the feature and the short film that I made will be coming out. So that's really kind of the best place.
That's awesome, and I'm very excited for it. And I'll also upload in the episode notes your social as well, your Instagram handle, so people can check it out. Thank you. You're amazing. I love your positive mindset and this empowerment, and this, you're a motivational speaker as well. So thank you so much for your time. I took a lot out of it, and I really appreciate it.
No, thank you for asking me. I was very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I was like, why me? That's great. I was like, very, why can't I think of what the word is called? Like,
humble?
Not humble. No, but like, I just felt like, wow, like special that you asked me. So thank you.
Well,
thank you
deserve
for asking
it.
me.
That's awesome. Thank you.
But no, yeah, thank you for inviting me. And I think what you're doing is really crucial and great, that you're normalizing, failure, and that it's a part of, just success. And it's really cool what you're doing. So I'm glad to be a part of it.
I love Shannon's take on making the most of her life and embracing the best of what the world has to offer. She highlights how we have the one life and how it's pretty short, so we can either spend it being miserable, or we can try to give ourselves the best opportunity to succeed. One of the many methods to live our best life is to put ourselves out there and to try and get that yes. This only comes through embracing failure and rejection. Shannon says the only people who don't get yeses in their lives are the people that kept themselves from getting them. You can only fail if you give up. Further, she goes on and she says, them saying no is no different than me not calling or putting yourself out there. So I may as well give myself the chance of getting a yes. Thank you for listening to the Funny and Failure podcast, exploring the deeper side of comedy.